So Jadam is the new Jamaican man coming forth in his unfettered mode of expression in dance. It was a weekly sort of encouragement to take on something challenging. The dance in Jamaica, particularly for men, is not always viewed as safe or accepted pursuit. The social stigma associated with male dancers with effeminacy persists, and so for many, stepping into the space demands a level of bravery few acknowledge. And we can post the link as well for anybody who wants to look into it a little more. But let's start there. Dance as a safe space for Jamaican men. So, as Jamaican men, I want to hear from you all first.
Boy, I see if that space doesn't look too safe at all for me. I'll be honest with you. Again, I mean, the image that it portrays. I mean, we grew up in a. I don't even want to say. I mean, things and times have changed. We grew up in a homophobic culture, homophobic society, even back in our days. So when we see certain things, it's more of a trigger. So for me, when I saw that image, it was more triggering than anything else. And again, I don't care what a man want to do with themselves and what kind of activities they want to do. Whether you want dance, whether you want sing, whether you want paint or whatever. To me, it was the image that was portrayed, right? And why I say this is, again, I don't see all of the articles that come out, but why am I not seeing a mechanic room where men are fixing cars or something, and you say, okay, a safe space for whatever? Or why am I not seeing a chess lounge, a gaming lounge where men are there playing chess or something else? Why is it that I am seeing something that looks suggestive, like you're saying that this is something that should be accepted? To me, there's other meaning to how I look at it. There's other meaning than what it is putting out. And again, I could be wrong, and I'm perfectly fine with being wrong, but I just look at it like you're trying to tell me to be accepting, or to be in acceptance of something that may become the new norm, or whatever. But as I said, the image and the images were very, 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 very suggestive. And I scrolled through all of those images and I could not see one image of a. I will find a way to kind of phrase this properly. But you see, phrasing it how I want to phrase it. There's no easy way to phrase it. I don't see any image of a man there that looked effeminate. And as I said, that's why I don't know if there's any easy way to frame how I framed it
Wait,
based
wait,
on the images.
wait, hold on. Want to clarify? You're saying the images that you're seeing,
The
are
images
you
that
saying,
I saw,
are
the
you
men
saying
look
that
very
they,
fem. The men look
oh, they
very
look
feminine.
very feminine?
They
Oh,
look
oh,
very
right.
feminine.
Oh,
Yeah,
they
they,
look
Okay,
effeminate. Okay.
yeah, they,
okay.
they
Okay.
look very feminine. The men look
Okay.
very feminine in those images, and that's what I'm saying. It was very triggering because, mm, you know. So for me, I mean, I see another meaning behind that picture. There are many other safe spaces that you could have made reference to, or many other things that you could have talked about where men would gather and feel safe or whatever. Me personally, I ain't going to that dance studio or any dance studio at all to express myself or be safe. But again, that's just me. There are men that are passionate about dancing, and that's perfectly fine. To me, it was just triggering how the image looked and everything.
Me, I think that's fair. Um, I'm so I sort of have a broader view on it in terms of the relevance of the dance, not so much on the image it portrays, right? Because basketball players, um, for example, in the NBA, they do ballet training for strength and conditioning, working on their balance. And we wouldn't look at a basketball player, well, some of them, and say, oh, these men are effeminate or something. But there is a real value to these dance. And ballet, I'm not sure if people know, is widely considered to be a very difficult discipline, So there are values that are inherently beneficial to both men and women that are associated with ballet that we may not necessarily be aware of, given that, for one, ballet is not something that is widely regarded in Jamaica. We see ballet as, you know, a white person thing. That's not the kind of dancing that we are interested in, or that's not the kind of dancing that we find to be particularly captivating. But the truth and fact of it is, if you strip it down to its core, it is something that it takes a great deal of skill. It takes a great deal of effort, and it's something that you have to be dedicated to in order to be good at. So if we're looking at it from that perspective, outside of the optics, what you're actually seeing is men indulging in physically demanding activities that, run contrary to convention in some ways. But men are actually engaging in these sort of activities to the physical benefits. And there's also the community element of it. And there's also the novelty of it. You could find that, this could be a sort of pioneering movement. Again, this is not for the perception of what the image conveyed. We're not talking about men who are, oh, you are effeminate and you are this and you are that. We're talking about a pioneering movement that could sort of open up opportunities for men here who are physically gifted in that way. But because this is something you've never tried, you don't know what sort of avenues exist for you to self-actualize. Ballet dancers are well paid. It's just like a sport, for example. When you look at bobsled, for example, we have our movie Cool Running and all of that. You would see something like that as that's not our thing. Like, make them do for them thing. But what you found is that when black athletes sort of go into these spaces that were predominantly occupied by, white people, they tend to dominate because now you are in an avenue where you're saying, oh, I've never done this before. Let me try this and see how good I could be at this. If you even look at another element, let's say you're talking about opera. We don't find opera necessarily appealing, but you don't know how many great opera singers we have out here because it's not something that is accessible to us. So I see the benefit of something like this, even if it's something I wouldn't personally indulge in. I understand because, as Rimdi rightly said, we grew up in a society that is homophobic, and that's just the reality of how we were raised, and we see things like these, and as Rimdi rightly said, it triggers. But if we move beyond the trigger of what that is and to start to break down what we're seeing, we can begin to see the benefit of how something like this might be a safe space for men. Yeah.
So going back to the homophobia, which is sometimes when we hear it, we don't break it down like homophobia, literally the fear of the homoerotic or the fear of something or someone homosexual. And I think the fear like looking at the comments and looking at the videos, or even what Rimsey mentioned, like the trigger, I feel like there is a constant underlying fear that masculinity is under threat or can potentially be destroyed by anything deemed feminine or too feminine, right? And I think this example kind of embodies that. Barry Shivans talks about the softness toughness dichotomy, or male being tough and women and female being soft, or the fact that anything that is feminine is deemed as less than or not as strong. And so when you say you throw like a girl or hit like a girl and all of those things, it means that the like masculine, and not just masculine, the ultimate masculine is the standard and everything else falls below that, right? And so I think it's important for us to have these conversations to try to understand why we feel what we feel, and how we respond to it. But when I saw it, honestly, it didn't there was when I saw it, I had no feeling for or against it. It's really just something that exists, right? Meaning, and I guess is really based on how I see safe spaces. Any space that allows a man to express themselves is a space that can help to reduce the risk of mental health issues and suicide,
Yep.
right? And so while it might not be for me,
Yeah.
right? If someone else can access that space and feel quote unquote safe, or feel like they can do something without being attacked and ridiculed and all of those things, and that prevents that person from ending their own life, then I'm all for that, right? The other things is really not my business, because I mean, it raises the issue: can a man be a dancer and still be a
Yeah.
heterosexual man? Yes, absolutely. Can a man be a mechanic and still be gay? Yes, absolutely. So Rimsey, your mic off. So so
Yeah, yeah. No, I was
if
saying, yeah, I know many. You have many men who dance and are straight. But yeah, I get what you're saying. My thing is, as I said, for me, it was the image. And
Yeah.
I mean, it might not have done anything to you, but me I gotta be real. And many men who saw that image or saw the images and scroll through the images could see what I see, could see what I saw.
Mhm.
You have men, yes, they dance, but they don't look a certain way. The men that
okay,
were portrayed on that image, they looked a certain way.
all right, good.
So so
So,
there's no beating behind the bush.
so,
So
The look was
so
pretty
so so devil so so
pretty
devil
clear.
devil devil's advocate, right? Even if they if
Not
they
because they
looked,
look a certain way mean they are. If that's where
no,
you're
no,
going,
no,
perfectly
that
fine.
that's
But
not how I go with it.
but
But
it just trigger
if
me. It
it's
just look a
if it's
certain
a
way, and you just try to make it seem like why me not see I put every weekend another safe space that don't look like that.
and the answer for that is, I think the answer to that is based on this very response. It would not have been as significant if they said, um, mechanic opened shop as a safe space for men,
Why
because
wouldn't it be?
that is a normalized
yeah.
perspective of,
So you put something that's not normal, so it create a buzz.
yeah,
Like,
but it is, and is not, and isn't that significant? All right, if it is that I don't feel like there is a space for me, and I see that something like that exists, why shouldn't that make the news as much as something that is
could,
dominant?
could I ask a
But the dominant one ain't making the news.
Because it doesn't need to
Which
make the news because it's dominant.
But it
is
needs to
dominant,
make
right?
I think it needs to make the news because nobody's knowing that it's out there.
But
So,
think
I
about
don't
so
know. I don't
but
know of any that's out there. What I know
but
that's
do you
out there now is
but
a
all right.
dance studio.
But meaning, okay, so when I said in normalized spaces, right? We had a conversation about the barber shop last week,
yeah,
right? And the barber shop is a safe space for men, right? We other they have other safe spaces. We don't have a lot as men in general. We don't have a lot of safe spaces. Let's go there, right? There aren't a lot of safe spaces to really discuss and reason and express ourselves. That is not linked to anybody else, or it's not linked to production or linked to work. I'm talking about spaces where we can just relax and build and express ourselves, right? If a barber shop, if they had said, all right, new barber shop opens as a safe space for men to discuss or express themselves, that might not have moved the needle as much because the average man already sees the barbershop. Even if he don't call it a safe space, he already sees the barbershop as a place where he can go and reason and all of these things, right? The purpose of the news or the purpose of somebody covering something is to shed light on one of the purposes is to shed light on lesser known facts, lesser known details, or something that would be seen as novel, right? So, for example, if someone becomes the first female pilot, for argument's sake, right? That might make the new. I'm not saying, let me rephrase that because we already have female pilots. But I'm saying in a society or a space where there wasn't any females pilot or president or any other thing, that first or that rare thing is going to make the news because it is rare, it is uncommon, it is novel
That's the
versus
problem, and
a
that's the
pilot,
problem with the
right?
news.
That's but no, but how is that a problem? How will we know that every how do we so
No, I said that's
all
the
right, if
problem with the news.
no, but how is that a
Not that meaning the
no, not the story, but
accomplishment.
no, but why is that a problem? Why is that problematic that the news is covering something that we would not have normally known? Why is that a problem?
No, no, that's not what I'm saying. It's a problem that you don't cover everything. You only
But the
cover.
news
I do.
no, but the news again the news can cover everything,
Yeah,
right? And so it will only cover things that it has to be prioritized to things that are
And you
lesser known.
okay, you prioritize that. Okay, no problem.
No,
No, hey,
but Rimsey,
listen,
you're talking about
I
you're
will
talking about
forever,
you're talking
I
about
will.
media as is a you're talking about media as is a monolithic thing. A journalist covered this story, and it is because they saw it as significant. Media isn't a monolith,
yeah.
right? There
True,
are other stories of other examples, and I could point them to you where
true.
people did things about male safe spaces. There are stories, but the fact that
Mhm,
we're talking about this means that it triggered something in the space that caused it to
mhm,
rise to the top. And what I'm saying is the conversation, this is not, the story itself is not problematic. That's not what's problematic to me, right? What is not even, let me not use problematic. What is fascinating to me is how we
mhm.
respond to these things and trying to understand why, right? Like you said, it was triggering to you and you could understand why because of how you were raised.
Yeah,
The
it's
question, what I'm
it's
trying to, what I'm trying to
three different
what
reactions.
what I'm trying to understand is why. 'Cause let me give you a background. Like one of the reasons that I decided to move to Jamaica is because the music and the picture or the image I had of Jamaica was that it was a very anti-gay space, right? Which was how I was raised. I was raised in a village where anybody who was considered gay would I get buckle and stone. So I was like, all right, I'm going to, and I wrote about it in my dissertation. When I moved to Jamaica, I thought I would see the same things. One of the first things I saw in Jamaica was a man shaving eyebrow, and that rattled my brain. And that man was considered a bad man. And then when I see the man, him a wear baby fat jeans and all of them things, I said, this does not make sense to me. When me hear say, man, bad man no bleach and then cartel bleach, that did not make sense to me because coming from where I'm coming from, that is not masculine. What I'm saying is there is this constant fear that we are going to lose masculinity or masculinity is a threat, when in fact it is a whole range of things that we accept, we choose to overlook in different spaces and contexts. All right, athletes wear tights all the time. We don't say nothing about an athlete wearing tights. We would never consider that man gay or effeminate if him a wear tights and run across the track. In this picture, the man them a wear tights, right? But now we are going to say, all right, the man them a wear tights, but their body language is saying effeminate. What I'm saying is, what does that have to do with us? It's not a safe space for us, but it's a safe space for another man, right? And for me, as a man, I have no interest or intrigue in what another man does with with his time, with his life, and especially with his body parts. That's why I say it didn't move the needle for me, right? Because it's not a safe space for me, but does that mean it is not a safe space for another man? A safe space for me is really just sitting down and talking, right? But that might be enough for me, but it might not be enough for another man, right? We can have a conversation, and I don't feel like this is where I disagree with you, Ramsey. I don't feel like one story that a journalist covers is going to destroy the image or is going to send the wrong message. Because just like all the times before, if a man decide to do something, going back to cartel, if a man decide to do something, he might go do it. And there is no amount of tellings or no amount of barrage. Cartel just put in extensions. 20
Yep.
years ago, that would have been seen as something that is not masculine. But we ignore it and we accept it as well. All right, cartel do it. He has other masculine markers, meaning him rich, him famous, him have picnics. So all right, we can check those boxes. So that means he is not. And we always do it. We always do it. So seeing this is just another example of, all right, we are gonna try police and say, all right, this is why this shouldn't be done. It's really not our business. And like I said, miss a video on the man them say, all right, teach the man them a skill instead. I don't feel like it needs to be either or. You can teach a man a skill without having to worry about another man doing ballet or doing dancing.
Yep.
And what I find problematic is that a skill and expression is not always, they're not always equal. The whole point of the thing is to get somebody to express themselves, right? If I learn a skill, that is not expression. That is really just training me to work and to provide and taking me down the same path that has gotten me or people before unhappy, unable to express themselves, and sometimes killing themselves because they've been taught to work, and that is all, not express yourself. And again, I am not a proponent of people just walking around or men just walking around expressing them feelings all the time. But there has to be avenues for you to get things out because it's literally a matter a life and death.